Hello and welcome to the Fairy God Boss live webinar. I am very excited for today's panel and of course to have our esteemed panelists with us, but everybody hopefully around the world joining us too. So while we're waiting, you will see a chat box on the side of the screen. I would encourage you all to say hi and let us know where you're joining from today. I'll give people a couple of minutes. Okay, I see we have Connecticut represented. Oh, Oklahoma, nice. Arkansas, Tucson, Arizona. I went there when I was a kid on vacation. Nice to see you, Leona. North Carolina, New York, Texas. Oh, it's great to see so many people joining. Northern Ontario, representing there. Wanda, hi. Summerlin, Nevada, with Jesse. Excellent. Well, thank you for all tuning in today. I am going to go ahead and get started. But first of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am Julie Allen, and I'm the SVP of Marketing here at Howard Hughes, which is a large-scale real estate development firm. And before we dive into the conversation, I want to just get a few official announcements out of the way. I'll try and put on my official voice for this. So this session will be recorded and shared via email with all registrants. So if your boss does call halfway through, you can pick up because you will always catch up later. And during the discussion, we would love to hear from you all watching and tuning in at any point. I will do my best to get to all comments and respond and integrate them into the conversation. Okay, so for those of you that may not know, Fairy God Boss is the largest online career community for women. Millions of women visit Fairy God Boss for career connections, jobs, community advice, hard to find intel on how companies treat women, and virtual events like this. As I was thinking to myself about this earlier, I couldn't help but think I wish Fairy God Boss would have been around when I was starting out in my career, because back then things like this just didn't exist, and I think it's an incredibly helpful resource. So kudos to the Fairy God Boss team for running panels like this and providing a plethora of information for women out there in the workplace. And now, little drum roll, please. Should have brought my mini drum. I'm excited to kick off today's event, Howard Hughes, where innovation and opportunity intersect, sponsored by Howard Hughes. And I'm thrilled to welcome to this conversation three of my favorite colleagues, Sarah Aguilar, Riddhi Doshi, and Valerie Lobig. If each of you could just take a moment to introduce yourselves, that would be great. Tell us a little bit about you, who you are, and what you do here at Howard Hughes. So, Sarah, you've got a very interesting background today, so I'm going to start with you.
Hi, Julie. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Sarah Aguilar. I work at Howard Hughes, and I head up our corporate social media and content strategy. So I'm very excited to be here with all these wonderful ladies today and looking forward to the conversation.
Okay, Riddhi?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Riddhi Doshi. I work in our Houston office on the development team. I focus on developments within our master plan communities. I've been with the company for a little over 4 years, transplanted straight from Bombay, India to Texas about 7 years ago. Geez, it's been long. And yeah, very excited to talk to everyone today.
Fantastic. Valerie, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Valerie Lobig. I'm the VP of Audit and run our internal audit group. I've been with Howard Hughes about 2 years. Have a lot of years of experience behind that, but really excited to be here. I oversee all of the Sarbanes-Oxley testing and the audits, and most recently the partnership with Habitat for Humanity International and kind of getting that off the ground on all of our regions. So excited to be here with all of you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for those great introductions. And just a reminder for everybody just tuning in, please feel free to participate in the conversation today using the chat box on the right. I will be answering as many questions as possible and putting them to our panelists as well. So we're going to jump straight in and talk about innovation, given it's the topic of today's conversation. And I want to say we're thinking about innovation more broadly as a mindset. It's not just about technology. It's how you tackle problems. It's how you find new ways of doing things. And that is very much the ethos here at Howard Hughes. Now, I've been at the company for almost 7 years. And one of the reasons I've stayed so long is our openness to challenging the status quo and thinking outside of the box. So I wanted to start by asking the group, in your respective teams or further afield, how do you think Howard Hughes goes about encouraging innovation amongst our teams? Valerie, maybe you want to kick things off?
Sure. So what I noticed coming into Howard Hughes, or what I was most excited about, was that this was driven as the tone at the top. So it's really the CEO, the CFO, and the president in the company just living this and breathing this in the culture. And we all know what starts at the top in the company flows out throughout the culture. I think they're really open to change. They drive wanting to listen, wanting to improve processes, make things better, more efficient, and be known as a leader in areas. And the other thing that I absolutely love at Howard Hughes is the culture of continuous learning and development. All of the different opportunities for webinars, continuing professional education, working with others on the outside, and then bringing all of that back. I think that's really powerful in an organization to have a developmental type culture and then drive that throughout the company.
That's great. I absolutely agree with everything you said there. And I love this phrase, tone at the top, because I couldn't agree more. The leadership we have today is so encouraging of new ideas and ways of doing things that, I think it really sets us apart as an employer, as well as this culture of continuous learning. We live in a rapidly changing and evolving world. And I think, continuous learning is absolutely key. And the fact that we do such a good job of encouraging it is a real positive. Riddy, do you have anything to add?
Sure. From a development perspective, when I think about innovation, I think about forward thinking, because all of our communities are multi-decades. They span our lifetimes and beyond. So for us to really think about what we're planning today and stand the test of time 50 years from now, 100 years from now, takes a lot of thinking and challenging, thinking about how people not only use space today, but how they're going to use space 10 years from now, 20 years from now, how transportation will change, how we use, how architecture will change. So something that stands the test of time is really something that we focus on here at the company. And I love that.
And how does that, I'm intrigued just on a personal level, how that planning works when you're thinking about the future in terms of autonomous vehicles.
Sure.
How does that change the master plan that you're putting together, given we don't know what direction this is going to take?
Exactly. I mean, we have to think about space as something that can expand and contract to a variety of uses. So what may be a garage today could be something else tomorrow. We're looking at things like public transportation, but from an autonomous vehicle standpoint. So where we had the trolley in the Woodlands that was established several decades ago, could that be an autonomous vehicle loop that would run through our community and bring people to the downtown 10 years from now?
That's very, very cool. Yeah, I was reading recently about how autonomous vehicles are just going to enhance to immensely, because rather than having to spend time focusing on the road and driving, your commute can be, you know, an hour spent reading your emails or learning something new. So I think it's really interesting when you put it in the context of master planning and taking all of those considerations into mind. It's very interesting. Okay, so you know, next topic of conversation is around kind of solutions that we've seen implemented at Howard Hughes. As many of you know, on this call, I've been fortunate enough to be part of the founding team of HHX, which is our in-house innovation team, which has some super exciting projects in the pipeline. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. But are there any particular innovative solutions, and again, not necessarily focused on technology, but just different approaches to ways of doing things that you've seen implemented since you've been with the company? Sarah, why don't we start with you on that one?
Yeah, sure. I would say that this isn't something that I've personally implemented, but it's something that really stood out to me when I first discovered this job for Howard Hughes. And it's that the social media function is really closely tied with the communications team at Howard Hughes. So I work really closely with our head of comms, but I also kind of straddle a position where I work closely also with the creative and brand team and marketing team. So I think it provides a singular thread that we can weave through what we're communicating to our audience and what brand we're showcasing. So that's probably what I would say from my perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example of having to adapt, right? If you think back in the day, you know, my background is traditionally in media, and the media landscape evolved hugely.
Right.
You know, at one point it was putting out a press release and getting articles featured in print. And then you had the explosion of social media, which absolutely changed the game entirely.
Yeah.
And then we've seen that further evolve with the launch of new platforms. And, you know, who knows what's going to happen as, you know, AI is more integrated into what we're doing. I think, you know, for me, the core principles always stay the same. It's, you know, communicating in an interesting way, and the platform is just the outlet.
Yeah, we're seeing, I think, a lot of brands are taking a social first approach to communications. I think that in that sense, Howard Hughes is a pretty forward thinking company as far as, you know, most real estate companies in this industry are kind of a step behind trends. I feel like Howard Hughes kind of breaks the mold there.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. Our approach to how we communicate, how we market is definitely different in a good way. So I'm excited to see what we do more of in the future, and having seen some of the work that you've been putting out, I'm excited for more of that. So
likewise.
So on that note, so we talked about the industry as a whole, and in the realm of brand and marketing and comms, as doing things a little bit differently. But how else would you say we as a company differentiate ourselves from other real estate industry players, particularly in terms of innovative thinking and inclusivity? And Riddhi, maybe I'll go to you with that one.
Sure. So I think one thing that we've done incredibly well as a company is, while we have a plethora of case studies from our communities and our various regions around the country, we tend to not replicate what has worked for us in the past, because we're constantly looking for new ways to do things, newer, innovative ways. So that means that we don't confine ourselves to our markets alone. We look beyond our immediate markets, even internationally. We lean on expertise from a variety of consultants, planners. We talk to people from a global who have a global perspective to incorporate those lessons into communities in Houston, Texas. And I personally have had great opportunities to look at some really innovative ways of construction. Even I was recently at a facility that developing 3D printed concrete as a building technology.
Wow.
I thought was incredibly interesting. And I mean, their applications go beyond just Earth, and they're even thinking about outer space and Mars and the moon. So that was, I thought, incredibly innovative when we're looking at applications and bringing them to communities.
That's incredible that they're thinking about space, but you know, I always think when you think about how far we've come in such a short period of time, you know, even when I was a kid, I'm showing my age now, but we didn't have the internet, and to look at how far technology has progressed, and then you've got Elon with SpaceX and Bezos with his space program, and you know, it seems within grasp, so it's not that far out of the realms of possibility, actually.
Yeah.
So you know, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. But I'm interested about this 3D printed concrete. So how does that even work?
So the mix is your very typical traditional concrete from what my understanding is. However, they take robotics into account. So it's almost this giant robot that can print out and map out based on actual field conditions, as well as a computer program. So it's very coordinated. And, you know, there's just a lot of innovative things that are happening, even though our construction materials haven't truly evolved. The way we design and think and build is definitely changing. I mean, if you look at, we were talking about the past just a couple of minutes ago. If you look at buildings that have succeeded in the past and have stayed within budget and have stuck to a timeline, the theory is that you think slow and build fast. So there's a lot of what we do now is a lot of upfront coordination rather than field coordination, just as an example. I mean, there's a lot of, if you look at our, at a timber office that we're building, we're virtually building that entire building with all of its systems in 3D before we even start building that project on the field. So when it does go on the field, it's going to be incredibly fast, because a lot of the coordination that you would have otherwise done on the field in the past can now be done virtually.
That's amazing. So
Cool.
Real efficiency driver.
Absolutely.
I would say. And so as we see more and more of these technologies rolled out, the way I see these technologies, I know some people get a little concerned by technology, like, oh, maybe it's going to infringe on my job. I see it, in fact, in the opposite way. I see it as it's freeing up time for us to do much more productive things as human beings. And I think we're going to see a real productivity surge over the next few years as this technology takes away the more mundane tasks. So it's something I personally geek out on and get excited about. So it's great to hear that so much is happening in your industry. So moving on, one of the things I really like about Howard Hughes is that if you have the right attitude and work ethic and this kind of thirst for knowledge, you can really go far. I think people that have an entrepreneurial streak and, you know, go above and beyond to help solve problems, maybe even outside of their department, it might be just something that they've spotted that think, oh, actually, there's another way that we can be doing that's more efficient and whatnot. I think, you know, you'll do very well in your career here if you have those attributes. I was going to ask the group, maybe Valerie, I'll start with you. If you think there are other specific attributes or skills that are critical for success within our company.
Yeah, I think everything that you just said, I 100% or 1,000% agree with. I would say being open to change. I think a lot of times we are nervous or afraid of, you know, taking a risk. But I think taking those risks is really what helps you develop in your career, and raising your hand for whatever those opportunities are. I think sometimes I've seen people like, oh, I don't really want to do that. But if you can do it for a period of time, I always say make it rock, make it amazing. It's probably going to help you in your career or provide visibility. And then my second biggest thing is being a continuous learner and picking up knowledge along the way. So trying to dig in and learn as much as you possibly can about the business, the industry, so that you can pick up, speak up, participate in, all sorts of different types of meetings with all different levels in the company.
That's spot on. I really love this. Make it rock, make it amazing. I feel like we should have printouts of that on our desks as a reminder moving forward. Riddy, anything to add on that one?
Yeah, so actually I'd like to highlight how as a company, we don't have a standard cookie cutter idea of what our ideal hire should be. I mean, we have people that come from diverse backgrounds, educationally, culturally. I mean, we have a very good mix of people here. And I think that's what makes us successful as a group. On a personal note, I started off as a major in business and economics, and then I got my undergraduate degree in architecture. And here I am as a developer, and not every other developer in the region has the same trajectory as myself even. So even within our small group, we have a lot of diversity, and then you add to it all the other people. I mean, all of y'all with your different backgrounds and everybody else at the company. I think that really kind of creates a very good mix of people and minds and perspectives and ways of thinking that create great places.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When I got hired at Howard Hughes, I'd never worked in real estate before. I'd spent like 12 years working in media at like the BBC and MTV. And I came with this perspective that they embraced. And I was able to set up this in-house digital studio, then took on creative, then was giving the leeway to kind of set up this innovation group. And now I'm running marketing, which kind of infuses all of those past experiences. So it's been really great to see how I can apply experiences gained in other industries and apply it here. Because I think that the diversity of the viewpoints that we have here is really what makes us stand out and is so great. So off of the back of that, what career development opportunities do you think exist here? If you're maybe starting out in your career, like we've shared our personal ones, but for somebody just joining the company.
Yeah, I was at the very young stage in my career. When I started here, I just had a few years of experience. So I joined the company as a development analyst, and then I was exposed to a lot more things, thinking about entitlements and commercial land and land sales and master planning. And that evolved years later into a full-time development role. So even within the company, I've been able to not just move upwards within my own sort of stream of expertise, but really move between connected but different departments even to apply my skills that I learned starting out here, and then how that helps kind of make me a good developer.
That's awesome. Sarah, anything to add on this one?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure that I have the least amount of tenure of anyone on this call at Howard Hughes. I've been with the company just under a year, so I'll make a year in May, so next month. But something that I feel really grateful for are the opportunities for career development here. Specifically within my team, I've been able to set both annual and long-term goals that I'm able to evaluate over time and really have a path laid for how I want my career to go within the company, which really gives me an incentive to try new things and have initiative and really work toward something incredible within Howard Hughes. But also, other than that, there's lots of opportunities for professional development in my field. As you can probably tell, I'm not in the office. I'm in New York City right now, attending a social media conference. So I've been able to meet with industry experts, network, and really learn what's on the cutting edge of social media comms and marketing, and bring that back to Howard Hughes. So it's pretty cool.
Fantastic. And on that note of learning, and a few of you have mentioned continuous learning. One of the benefits that we have here at Howard Hughes is support for continued education. So we actually get $10,000 a year to spend on continuous education. I'm actually right now in the middle of doing a course called AI Applications for Growth at Kellogg Business School, which is sufficiently challenging, but I'm learning a lot. And it's experiences like that that allow me to learn something new and then bring that back to the business and think about how those learnings can be applied. So I think that's a great benefit, and I was very pleasantly surprised when I heard that was a perk. But off of the back of that, what's something that you think most people, maybe even current employees, don't know about our company that you think they should? And Sarah, I'm going to go back to you again for this one.
Yeah. Since starting here, something I've noticed I didn't really know coming into the job, and maybe some current employees might not even know, is what we mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, that Howard Hughes is really focused on innovation, and we're lucky enough to have a really creative, forward-thinking executive and leadership team that want to push the envelope in real estate, and they want to think about the future, but that it sets the tone at the top. Like you said, Valerie, it really permeates throughout the whole organization. So I would say that's the main thing that surprised me about Howard Hughes, is how much of a focus they have on creating new ways of doing things. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Rudy, Valerie, anything to add on that note? Anything you think people should know about the company that they maybe don't?
I just have one fun fact that I think is interesting. Our new chairman of the board, Scott Sellers, was actually on the Habitat for Humanity International board. And I don't know that everyone knows that. And I feel like to have a board member that also understands giving back and philanthropy to set also the tone in the company, I feel like that's huge. So it's just a fun fact that I thought I would throw in.
I didn't know that, actually.
No, nor did I. I wanted to touch on, I know you mentioned Habitat for Humanity and your involvement with it in your intro, and I meant to come back to it. Exactly what are Howard Hughes and yourself doing with the charity at the moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we signed up to do a partnership with Habitat for Humanity International, and that means that we're going to do builds or activities in each of our regions. So we actually have all of that mapped. This week we start building an entire house from start to finish in Houston at a new development, which is super exciting. I can't wait to see our house, and we're going to do it all over the span of 8 days.
What?
And
That's
then,
amazing.
Exciting. And then
so
each of
cool.
the other regions, we just have different activities mapped. So either remodeling a house, Arizona just did some drywall. We'll do some siding and windows in Hawaii. We'll also work at a store that they sponsor. It's called Restore, and you can donate goods there. I'm also on the member of the board of Houston's Habitat for Humanity. I've been a member of that for 3 years, so I know a little bit more about kind of the inner workings of Habitat. So I think it's an amazing opportunity for all of our staff to participate in this and just be a part of giving back to something that we also do, of building communities. So it's a really exciting thing that we have in the company.
And it's a wonderful way to come together. It's a great team building exercise. Yeah. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our Camp for All Over the Edge that's coming up in April. Every year as a company, we sponsor an event for Camp for All. And the coolest thing is you get to rappel off this building that's about 35 stories tall, and fundraise. And it's a great event. And, you know, philanthropy does run pretty deep in our culture. The Houston region alone has members that are on about 50 boards and counting, whether it's the food bank or organizations like Camp for All or other organizations that help out special needs kids. It's a good mix of people here.
Yeah, I'm actually signed up to participate in the Houston Region Habitat Builds, I think, on the 18th. So it'll be my first time doing a volunteer event with Howard Hughes. I'm so excited. And it's cool that we actually have like paid time off specifically to volunteer, so that I know that like I'm giving back to the community, but I'm not having to sacrifice, you know, a paid work day to do it, which is, I think, says a lot about the company's values.
Yeah. I think, couldn't have chose a better partner than Habitat for Humanity, given the industry that we're in and the expertise that we have. So I'm excited to see this house that you're building, Valerie. I need pictures once it's done.
Of course.
That's for sure. Okay, so let's move on. We've brought up HHX a few times, which I mentioned is our in-house innovation hub. And I just want to tell a quick anecdote about how that came to be. So the beginnings of it actually came from a LinkedIn article I wrote back in 2022 about the tokenization of real estate on the blockchain. I'm showing my geeky side now, but I'm very into blockchain. And our CFO happened to read it and reached out to me. And from there, we formed this blockchain working group that recruited other members. And, fast forward 2 years, we now have this fully fledged innovation department working across all types of technology. So I think my learning or piece of advice there is, put your thoughts out there, put your opinion on new technology, on different ways of doing things out there, because you never know who might see it and it might strike a chord with. So, excuse me, a little bit of water. All this talking. So, they have some really exciting projects in the pipeline now at HHX that are looking at how we can make some of our internal processes more efficient, how we can impact the consumer side of the business. Unfortunately, I can't talk about too many of them today because they're not public yet. But it's, again, testament to the company that a LinkedIn post can go to a fully fledged department. And, I haven't heard that story within many other organizations. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I did notice, Julie, in the chat that Sue posed a question that's a little relevant, and I want to kind of throw it to you. She asked, what technology do you think will have the biggest impact on real estate over the coming years? So I think that...
Ooh, that is a good question. And I'll happily take that. I think, after hearing everything that Riddy's working on, there's obviously huge potential in design, development, and construction. On my side, we've been, like the rest of the world, heavily focused on generative AI and how that can make kind of back office processes more efficient, reduce, time spent, go back to these mundane tasks. But also when it comes to content generation, anybody that's used GPT-4 will know that, you can very quickly generate text. You can do some really cool stuff with images now. I was putting a presentation together a few weeks back, and a couple of our team members didn't have headshots. They had really bad photos, really grainy. I'm like, come on, guys, have you really not got a better photo? They're like, no. So we put them through a headshot AI generator, and these photos came back like nothing you've seen before, so perfect, to the point where everyone was asking who did their headshots.
I've experimented a little with the AI headshots.
Right?
It's very interesting when it comes back.
Right? Yeah, I mean, some of them are super off. You have 12 fingers and things.
Yeah.
But for the most part, what came back was pretty good, and they've been using this. So that's a tiny example. But when you start to think about the full marketing ecosystem and content generation, I think we're going to see a lot of efficiencies achieved there as the technology only gets better and better. I mean, we're in such early days of it. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of compounding, so it's only going to get bigger and stronger over time, and hopefully it continues to be used in the right ways. But I think that's a huge opportunity for not just our business, but for every business.
You know what I'm most excited about is people have complained about how technology made them so much more busier. You're responding to emails all the time, or you're on a Teams meeting all the time. You're doing a lot of administrative tasks. But to your point, Julie, if we can make it more efficient, it'll give us time back to think. And that's something that only us humans can do. So while technology can help us with all the administrative tasks, I'm excited for a 2-hour block where all I can do is think about new ideas for our communities, for our company, for my personal life even.
Right, exactly. And that comes back to that like productivity surge of, it's going to be interesting to see what we can do when we have that extra bit of time.
Yeah, definitely from a working perspective, I've thought about, in the future having an AI assistant in my computer who can help like with scheduling and, meeting efficiency and all of those things. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, very, very exciting times. Are there any other technologies that spring to mind that we're maybe developing? Valerie, I don't know if there's anything on the like financial systems side.
We do. Yeah, I've got one that I can share.
Yeah, it'd be great to hear.
We implemented a new application called MindBridge, and it was really cutting edge, leading edge in my world, where all the financial data gets loaded in. And then every month we can evaluate that financial data, almost like a piece of insurance for the company before we file with the SEC. So it has thousands of algorithms built in the background that literally spits out if, hey, this isn't booked to the correct account, or there's this really large material entry. Does that make sense for you guys right now? And the exciting part of it is KPMG, our external auditors, also evaluated it and chose that as well.
Nice, amazing, very cool. It's great. Yeah, I think, we having this HHX group as well, their role is to keep an eye out for new technologies, and rather than set it up as a like enclosed team, their approach has been to get kind of innovation champions from around the business. In fact, I think they're having their first meeting today. So it means that we have people in every region who are keeping an ear to the ground in terms of what technologies are existing, what experiments are happening in the industry, and bringing that knowledge back. We will then figure out what is worth potentially pursuing and piloting, and hopefully will lead to some wins. But again, I love the idea that it's about being inclusive and not just a group of be like, hey, we're innovation and you can't be part of our club. So I think that's a really nice feature of how it's been approached. I know we have a couple more questions from the audience. Sarah asks, what is the demographic of the leadership team here at Howard Hughes? I feel like we have good female representation on the leadership team. There's a group of, I think, about 25 of us. And it's definitely got good representation, good diversity. You can check it out on the Teams page of the main Howard Hughes site if you want to learn more. But again, for me, it's about the culture of that team. Everything that we've talked about on today's call.
Just an interesting statistic that I'll share is that Howard Hughes is made up of 55% women. So over half of our employee demographic is female, which I think is super cool.
That's great. And maybe you wouldn't expect that from a real estate firm. It's that's a great start to have. Maria asks, are there any real estate trends that you'd like to talk about affecting our business? Riddy, I don't know if you want to take a shot at that one.
Whew, that's such a loaded question. Let me give it a think before I answer any real estate trends. There's a lot. I'm trying to narrow it down because, as I mentioned, our way of living is constantly evolving, and how people live is how we respond when we build and design to it. So when we're looking at everything, our apartments, how that space used to be utilized 10 years ago as opposed to now. Our amenity offerings have changed because people value a co-work space within their apartment communities. Retail has changed a lot, where there were shopping centers were kind of the prime attractors of public. Now it's become great food and beverage offerings, some really curated retail, and that kind of intersects with the marketing and the branding of how we create these places, not just from a design standpoint, but how we position them. And that's become a really integrated process, especially when we're thinking about placemaking in our mixed use districts. Offices have certainly changed. Parking is always the big question mark. Is 5 per thousand, 3.5 per thousand? What is the right ratio? Is it going to always be the same? Is it going to change? And we've certainly seen it change dramatically. To one extent, we've seen a lot more people, antithetical to what one would think as from a work from home scenario. We've seen a lot more people per square foot in our offices. On the other side, there's a lot of flexibility in the work environment. So there's a lot of people that are on site, working from home on a flex schedule. So always trying to space plan the right set of parking amenities and office space. So there's a lot of things that are changing, and it's all being driven by how people choose to live today.
Yeah, I'll shameless plug here, but our 2023 annual report just came out. And I think it really, I was thumbing through it this morning on our website, and I think it really beautifully illustrates the fact that, if you've watched the news or seen headlines in the past year, it seems as though real estate has been in a downward spiral. But interestingly enough, in our communities across the US, we've kind of seen the opposite. Things are thriving, office space is doing really well, people are buying tons of homes. So I think it really says a lot about what Howard Hughes is doing right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the key thing there, really, and Sarah, from what you're saying, is this mindset of being adaptable, like being able to flex to, kind of what the consumer needs are. And as they continue to evolve over time, just keeping that adaptable mindset, I think, is key. We have a couple more questions from our audience. Thank you all for your participation. So another one from Sue Jones. Any tips on maintaining an innovation mindset and how to nurture it in new employees? So I can start with that, and then maybe Sarah, you want to add.
Yeah.
We have a culture council here at Howard Hughes, and we regularly put on like fireside chats with thought leaders in various industries, and I think that's really a really great initiative for presenting new points of view and new ways of doing things. I think as HHX starts to take off as well, a big part of their remit is nurturing this innovation culture. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for inclusion in that from employees all around, as well as constantly communicating what we're working on. I think that layer of transparency is really key.
Yeah, I would echo everything you just said and bring attention back to what you talked about earlier when you were speaking about HHX and it not being a siloed department at Howard Hughes. There will be regional champions and committees across all of our regions. People will have a chance to bring new ideas and perspectives to what that hub focuses on. Another interesting thing will be that we're going to be putting out, content about what we're exploring. So be on the lookout for HHX on social media because we're going to have some fun stuff to share with our audiences.
Fantastic. And Riddy, we have a question just for you from Christina. Does Howard Hughes use drones for capturing information? What new technology have you been introduced to personally?
Sure. So yes, on the drones, yes, because we have a huge community that is simultaneously under construction, we use a combination of drone footage and satellite imagery to capture all of our construction activity to see how the community is evolving. We also use various technologies to capture the life cycle of our assets under construction, post-construction, and see longevity over time. The other thing that we also do is, we layer in GIS data over our community maps. And so that really gives us a lot of thoughtful information. We use things like Placer AI to track retail trends and people's movement through our communities. And that really helps us create a very thoughtful merchandising plan for our retail, for example. So technology is definitely touching every part of our business, everywhere we go, whatever we do.
Great. Okay, if anybody else watching along at home or at work has any further questions for the group, I would encourage you to submit them now, and we'll get to them before we wrap up. Oh, here we go. From Sophia. What do you think will be the most valuable skill to learn and implement in the next decade? For example, AI, machine learning, languages, etc. Does anyone want to have a shot at that, or I don't mind taking a stab at that one?
I can take a very short stab at it,
Okay,
but I think
sure.
As Gen Z enters the workforce, and as we talked about earlier, a lot of brands are refocusing to a social first approach. I think that for all generations, building skills in the digital landscape will be really important for the evolution of their careers, whether it be social media or any other avenue like this, webinar. People using those resources to really help develop their careers. I also think AI will have a really big impact, but I'm sure that you might have an opinion on that.
Well, it's funny, when I was working in media, I set out and I really wanted to work in TV production, like more than anything. But while I was working in TV production, I realized that there was a huge opportunity with the emergence of digital. And I wanted this job on the digital team working on the movies website. But I realized I didn't have any experience. So I literally, I went out and I bought 2 books on HTML and CSS. And I spent a good few weeks just studying these books. So I had enough knowledge to be able to wing the interview. And I ended up getting that job. And turns out I really loved digital more than traditional TV production. So I see what we're going through now. The same with social media. I've always tried to learn things quickly as they come to market. So I remember being on Twitter, as it was formerly known, when it was almost just a text messaging service. And then it blew up into what it is today. But I see the same thing with AI and blockchain. I think it's really important to arm yourselves with as many of these skills as possible. And I'm not talking about becoming a hardcore Python coder for AI, but just understanding how the technology works. I think will set you up very well for success, because if you can communicate with the people who are building, that's half the battle.
Yeah.
Piggybacking on the communication point that you bring up, I think a lot of what I have learned through my career has been through communicating with other people and through really understanding different perspectives from our residents, our users, et cetera, et cetera. And the way I see the demographics of Texas changing and where we're headed, I've taken it upon myself to learn a new language and get proficient in Spanish. I've come from a very multilingual background, coming from India, but always trying to expand on my communication skills and really be able to talk to people. So not quite as high tech as AI, but just
no, equally, if not more important, though.
Very more intimate, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, if there are no more questions at this point, we are going to move on to our closing lightning round of questions that everyone is going to answer. Very exciting, I know. So the first question is, share with us an accomplishment, your own or your team's, that you are most proud of. And I'm going to go with Valerie first.
Yeah, so I'm super excited just getting our audit function off the ground. We've kind of had one in-house and then outsourced and then brought in and outsourced over the years. So just providing some stability, bringing our SOX testing in-house, creating a team of really strong backgrounds, and then hopefully really adding value and being seen as a collaborative business partner in the company.
Fantastic. Sarah?
I think for me, an accomplishment that I'm most proud of has been really a collaborative effort. I think it's been basically establishing a presence on social for Howard Hughes, but I think it's only going to skyrocket with the collaboration between your, creative brand team, because I think once we have, I love the vision that your team is running with, and I think it's really going to elevate our brand and our digital performance. So that's what
That's
I'm most
great to
excited
hear.
about. Yeah.
Thank you. Rudy?
Yeah, Sarah, you mentioned earlier about how, everywhere we read, it's about how the construction industry and the real estate market is on a downward spiral. But something that I have to mention for our Houston region is just in our region alone, we have 4 projects that are currently under construction, which if you look at the competitive market, a lot of developers don't have the bandwidth, the financing, the stability to be able to accomplish something. And we're hopefully announcing the 5th one that will start construction shortly. So lots of activity for our team and a lot of work.
That's fantastic. Congratulations. Okay, last question. What advice would you give to your younger self, Valerie?
Sure. I would definitely say to sit up and speak up. I think more often than not, female leaders are raised or taught to be more polite. So I was always kind of going against the grain and speaking out, but I think I could have even done more so when I look back at my career. Because when you get the seat at the table and you know the answer, having that courage to be able to share, I know what you guys are all talking about, or I can help you, with just providing the confidence to share knowledge and, share with others. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah?
I would say it's a good question. I would say don't be afraid to branch out with your network, and start forming relationships and professional connections really early on. Because in my experience, the biggest advantage and the biggest opportunity funnel for me in my career has been through relationships and, nurturing those connections over time.
Couldn't agree more. And Rudy?
Yeah, so my advice would be to not let fear dictate your decision making. In my young 20s, I thought I was going to be an architect in Bombay, India, and that was the life that I was going to pursue. But I really didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy what I was doing. I knew that there was something else that was out there for me. And so just kind of in a leap of faith, I decided to move to Texas for a fresh start, go into development and do things that I didn't originally plan for. And it's paid me back in multiples. So I'm so glad I made that decision.
We are ready.
Thank you.
Exactly. Okay, I think that just about wraps things up. So I want to say a huge thank you to all 3 of you. I have personally really enjoyed today's conversation and learned a ton, actually. So I really appreciate you being so open and sharing your experiences with everybody. As a reminder to everybody watching along, we will be sending out a recording of today's event, along with some resources to learn more about opportunities at Howard Hughes. But in the meantime, be sure to check out Howard Hughes' profile and jobs on Fairy Godboss. And we'd love to hear your feedback from today. So please head to the Typeform tab on the right side of your screen. I think Daniela has put it in the chat, and share your thoughts in a 1-minute survey. Wishing you all the best in your careers if you're watching along at home. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.